Hi, everyone. Welcome to a brand new podcast, the Thurston Talk Podcast. My name is Philip Kerrigan. I am here to walk you through all of the really neat things that are happening here in Thurston County. It is an amazing community. It's a fast-growing community with a lot of life. And this area really needs a podcast that talks about the important things that are going on in this part of the state. So I have been a Thurston County resident for more than 20 years now, and I've seen this place grow and change and become totally a different face than it was before. And what we're here to talk about is all of the really cool things that Thurston really is all about. Thurston Talk is a place where folks, it's really like a news hub. And so what we'd like to do is take some of the news stories you see and some of the blogs you see from Thurston Talk and expand it into podcast form because, you know, all the kids are listening to the podcasts these days. It's not just going to be me talking at you the whole time. I actually will have guests that'll come in here and talk about the different events we have. In a couple weeks, for example, we've got the folks from the Tumwater Brew Festival coming in, things like that. We'll talk to the Olympia Downtown Alliance, talk about shopping during the holidays. So all sorts of really neat things that make this community really cool. Today's guest is actually, what is your position? What are you like the editor-in-chief?
Well, I am the chief executive officer and founder of Thurston Talk.
The founder of Thurston Talk, Dan Jones. Dan, thanks for hopping on your first podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. I appreciate it. This is going to be a great experience.
Yeah. So is this the first podcast you've ever done?
Let's see. I have been interviewed for different podcasts along the way, but it definitely is the first podcast that Thurston Talk directly is doing, where we're engaging with community leaders and then sharing that information back to our listeners and readers.
Which I think is really exciting, because I think one of the things that you and I talked about when we were first coming up with this concept was that there's podcasts everywhere. And they're all talking about big, giant issues. But there are very few podcasts that are talking about the issues that affect us every day.
Absolutely, absolutely. What we've seen, as the media industry has evolved at a local level, the eyeballs have been spread out across all these different avenues.
Right.
And so what we're working toward is to create a product, a platform where our leaders and the information that community members would be really interested about are able to access it and get to them.
Yeah, it's great. It's a really cool new way of doing this. Dan, let's talk a little bit about you and Thurston Talk.
Sure.
So can you give us a little bit of a history of sort of Thurston Talk and how you came to start the organization?
Yeah, sure. So back in 2000, I actually moved from the Seattle area to the Thurston County community, and noticed through that experience that as I mentioned, the media industry was evolving.
Yep.
And there was disruption taking place.
Yeah.
And so we were able to focus on the positive things that are going on in the community and create text-based content originally, a lot of photography, to grow an audience base that now I believe is the largest in this community in the social media and digital world. Just really leveraging and creating a product that brings people together in the digital world, and focused on, as you mentioned, not on these big, broad topics, but really community-centric. So, to be a Thurston Talk reader, for example, you're either going to live, work, or play in this community. Right. That's why you would be a reader.
Right. And you mentioned it. One of the interesting things is the changing in the way people got their news, right? Because everybody remembers the Daily Olympian. It was the building on Bethel, and they produced a daily newspaper that in its heyday was robust. It was really, it was actually a really high functioning newspaper.
Yes. And
of course the industry completely changed in the early 2000s. Can you talk about why you thought that like Thurston Talk could work in this community?
Yeah, absolutely. Just at a bare bones level, we from the tech world, I come out of the tech world, and as an engineer, we would say IP everywhere, so internet protocol everywhere. Yeah. And what does that really mean? And to bring that into the real world, we were saying that before there was iPhones. Before there was, an iPhone came out in 2007. So when that happened, what we believed, the team that we had put together, believed that the eyes were going to end up on these phones once they were connected to the internet. So we actually have in our office a pocket PC that wasn't connected directly to the internet as we see with our mobile phones today. Mm-hmm. But when we saw that, actually bought it, it's still in the box sitting there as that's the paper of the future. And I believe it was like 2007 summertime. A buddy of mine came out to Westport and he had an iPhone for the first time, and I remember doing the pinch and zoom, and I was like, oh man, that's going to be the delivery mechanism for content. And so that was the catalyst for us to then launch. Now we had the 2007 2008 kind of recession financial situations, and so then in 2010 we launched Thurston Talk when the environment was friendly for it. Yeah,
and one thing that I've noticed really about Thurston Talk is it really felt like word of mouth got this thing spread. It was super organic.
Very organic.
And now, I mean, to have the followers that you have on Facebook, right? That's where people literally started to get their Thurston County information.
Yeah, absolutely. So we used social media as our marketing engine.
Awesome.
Right, to get the word out there and create that word of mouth, as you mentioned. And then we've taken that model now from Thurston County and we've expanded it with the holding company North America Talk. And we're in 17 other communities across Washington and Oregon now.
That is so cool. That is so cool.
Yeah, very exciting.
So the biggest thing we're going to do with the podcast, as I mentioned, is we're going to sit down with folks, talk with people, the people, organizations, and events that are here in Thurston County that are big. We're going to talk about some of the issues here in Thurston County. This is not a gotcha podcast. This is an informational podcast. We're trying to deliver information to people here in Thurston County, here in the Olympia, Tumwater, Lacey area, on things that we think that you would actually genuinely be interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had the opportunity through this experience to sit at the table with a lot of the leaders that are guiding our cities and county and major events and having a real impact, the nonprofits in our communities, and to give them, those leaders, the opportunity to share their visions, missions, what they're up to is going to be extremely valuable for our community.
Yeah, absolutely. A final question to you, Dan, as we close out, and we kind of we're not really closed now. We're opening up.
This is the front.
As we get this whole thing started, what is it that you love about Olympia? I mean, you have been here for how long?
Yeah, I've been here since 2000. I grew up out in Grays Harbor, so I definitely was familiar with the Olympia area for sure. I think when people, when I'm talking to people about how great Thurston County is, the community, the people are amazing. And I roll it all up into it's easy living, right? It's just easy living in Thurston County. Yeah. Stuff is close by. And then, we have especially with our kids being in school, we have a really good network of just people that we've been able to connect with, as well as in the business community, being part of the Thurston County Economic Development Council, just a real good network of individuals to work with. So that's what excites me about Olympia.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Dan, thanks a lot for chatting a little bit on your podcast, the Thurston Talk podcast. As we continue this journey with the different folks we talk to, we hope to have you back in. We hope to have you talk a little bit about more of the stuff around here.
No, absolutely, Phil. And I really appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to this journey. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Today's episode of the Thurston Talk podcast is brought to you by Olympic Sotheby's International Realty. Olympic Sotheby's International Realty was founded in 2005 as the Green Realty Group and has been proudly serving home buyers and sellers in our community ever since. With more than 45 brokers and a team of dedicated full-time staff, Olympic SIR is here to help you with your real estate needs in Olympia and beyond. What sets Olympic Sotheby's International Realty apart is that you are not just another transaction to the brokers here at Olympic SIR. Their focus is spending time with you so that you feel comfortable throughout the entire real estate transaction. The motto of Olympic Sotheby's International Realty is as unique as the Northwest, and they live this sentiment every day. Their brokerage was founded locally and houses people who care about their community, which means you will have an advocate you can trust. Find an agent or start perusing local properties today at www.olympicsir.com, and make sure to follow them on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to the show. All right, welcome back to the big show. We're sitting here now with the founder of Olympic Sotheby's International Realty. Jim, say hello to the people.
Hello, people.
This is
Whoever's listening.
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
Okay.
So Jim Green is, as I said, is the founder of Olympic Sotheby's International Realty, the sponsor of the Thurston Talk podcast. Thurston Talk is super proud to be partnering with Jim. So what we wanted to do is talk a little bit about basically who you are, Olympic Sotheby's International Realty, but then also talk about like this partnership and why you decided to dive in to something like this, which is really centered around the community. First off, can you talk a little bit about your history with this place and a little bit about the transition?
Yeah, so I started a real estate company back in 2005. It was called Green Realty Group. And over probably the last 17, 18 years, I've built up what I consider to be kind of a local independent brand, essentially a community type minded real estate brokerage of very successful brokers. And this last year, I decided to take a leap and franchise the company with a international brand, Sotheby's International Realty. Yeah. People thought, "What are you doing?" And I get that question. People thought that I was going to retire. They thought that I was selling. They thought that I was getting out of the business or whatnot. And none of that was the reason why I did this. I ended up over the last couple of years just trying to discern what Green Realty Group was going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years. And just with what's going on in the real estate market, what's going on with brokerage houses throughout the country, just how agents, what type of services agents are looking for from their brokerage house, I had to start making some pretty big decisions, knowing that the market was going to probably not be as active as it had been over the last couple of years. And I just said, I'm going to have to change. I'm going to have to do some things that are going to change things up to still be relevant to my brokers, be relevant in the community. So I ended up researching all of these different real estate brokerage franchises, and there was only one that at any time I ever considered doing, and it was with Sotheby's. And I think it's because Sotheby's aligned with what I had always tried to create with my own local brand, and their culture, how they present themselves, their marketing, their level of service, their platform of service. I call it the white glove service level. Right. I just felt like Sotheby's spoke to me better than any other franchise out there. So I ended up here this last May to take the leap to join their franchise, their network. I am a locally owned independent company, so I'm not part of corporate Sotheby's International Realty. Right. I am an affiliate, and which allows me to have the same autonomy, the same role that I had as the owner designated broker of Green Realty Group. And that was key for me, because I just know that I am in a very local community that's very community minded. They care about dealing with local people. Mm-hmm. And so it was very important for me to still have that autonomy to become still the local real estate company, even though I have a backing of an an international brand. Yeah. We still are very localized. Right. And there's a few companies here in Thurston County that, albeit they have franchised with national franchises, they're still considered a local company, and they're known as local. And I wanted to have that same experience, and I figured what it's going to take for us to do that was making sure that all of us here at Olympic Sotheby's International Realty are still ingrained in the community. We still are part of the community. We still are involved with different civic organizations, different nonprofit boards, different businesses here in town. So everything that, even though I'm going to market myself as this international brand, it's going to have a local feel, and it's going to still deal with the local community here.
Yeah, it's like the brand may change and some of the things that you get may change, but one thing that people will notice, number one, you kept the tree.
I did. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
That's kind of a funny story. When I first started Green Realty Group, I had a local public relations marketing company sit with me and talk a little bit about how I wanted to brand Green Realty Group. And one of the things that they considered was this icon, the tree icon, which is obviously a pretty well recognized icon, especially being here in the Pacific Northwest. Everybody knows that we have a lot of trees here.
Yep.
And so when I branded Green Realty Group, everybody started recognizing Green Realty Group when they saw the tree. And it's a very specific looking tree, and it was a really cool way to get a top of mind awareness out there in the community just by having this tree. Well, when I decided to franchise with Olympic Sotheby's International Realty, I went to them and said, hey, I really would like to be able to continue the use of that tree icon. And they went down a very long process and finally came back and said, you know what? We think that's a great icon, and we think that actually is something that you should be using.
Yeah.
And go ahead and start using that in your brand core materials. And so we ended up keeping the tree, which if you were to ask all of the brokers here at Olympic Sotheby's International Realty, I would say almost every single one of them says, yeah, we need that tree.
Yeah.
So you'll see it. The only real difference is you're going to see a name change, and you're going to see a different color.
Yeah.
So we're no longer the green and white. We're now a blue and white.
Yeah.
And we have Olympic Sotheby's International Realty. The reason why I chose the Olympic name was just because, again, I want to really key in on the Pacific Northwest, the Olympic Peninsula, anything that has to do with the Olympic Mountains. We essentially service all of these areas that concentrate on this whole Olympic Peninsula. So I just thought it was probably the right name to call us at the time. And I think it works well. I think when you see the tree icon with the word Olympic next to it, I think it works very, very well.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, it keeps with, so the other things that people have come to know and love about your brokerage, the really like personal community touch, the agents who deeply care about the people who they're serving, that all remains the same.
Yeah, I can tell you, that was my number one concern when I went through this transition to franchise. Because when you franchise, obviously people think of franchises as being national. And this one happens to be international, one of the very few that are international. And it was the big concern for me, knowing that I grew up here. I am a Thurston County guy. I grew up in Aberdeen originally until I got into high school. So I'm this Northwest Olympic Peninsula guy, right? And all of my clientele, all of the agents that work here, we've all been this local group of people. So my biggest concern was, what was the community going to think? All of a sudden now I have this international brand. And so it was very important to me in messaging to make it very well known that nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. Matter of fact, this gives me greater opportunities to serve this local area with, I have way more tools at this point that my brokers can offer their clients. I have a way bigger reach, network reach. Literally, we are getting people from all over the country now contacting this company to talk about Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater, Lewis County, Mason County.
Right.
I've never had that opportunity to where I'm getting real estate owners, relocation specialists from Colorado, from Oklahoma, from New York. They're calling this company now, sending referrals to us here for people that are looking to move to this area. And for me, that's what it's all about. We can do a really good job explaining what it's like to live here in this local market. So that's, for me, was the biggest thing that I felt was I could serve this community better. And I'm still owning it. I'm still locally owned, right?
Yeah.
And I have all of the autonomy in the world, which has been great.
Yeah. So kind of parlaying into that, we'll talk a little bit, we've talked a little bit about community. Can you talk now about why Thurston Talk? Why do you think that something like this podcast was something that you wanted to get into?
Well, first and foremost, I know Thurston Talk when they first started. Dan Jones and I know each other, and Dan and I grew up in Aberdeen. And
oh, wow.
So I had known about Thurston Talk for many, many years when they first got started. And I was a huge marketer in the local newspaper here. Green Realty Group was one of the largest advertisers in the newspaper for the local newspaper. And when Thurston Talk came about, it became very apparent based upon what's going on in the media world and what's going on with newspapers and whatnot. Now that everything is going online digitally and social media-wise, I knew that to get a greater reach, I needed to have a way better digital presence locally. Thurston Talk really was the only one that I felt could really meet that need here for the local market. And so when I ended up as Green Realty, we've obviously been doing things with Thurston Talk for years, but when we got to the point when we're going to make this transition to Olympic Sotheby's International Realty, I knew it became even more important for me to be out there on this localized platform to be able to push the message for not just our company, but push the message for the local community, other companies, other nonprofits and whatnot, different organizations, different events.
Right.
And I just felt like I wanted to have some type of share in that experience.
Yeah.
So luckily had an opportunity to have Dan Jones sit with my marketing team and come up with a concept of doing a podcast that my company has the opportunity to sponsor.
Yeah.
And I just thought, what a better way. I mean, it's the coolest thing for me to see the fact that we can go out digitally on this platform, not just in Thurston, but Dan's obviously got other platforms in other counties. And I thought this is a great way for me to put the message out that we care about the local community. We're going to be involved with the local community, different organizations and events, and Dan's given us that platform to be able to do that.
Yeah. Final thing, what do you love about this community?
Well, I think what do I not love about the community would be a lot quicker question, right?
Yeah.
Because there's virtually
Top three.
virtually nothing. I mean, so I grew up here. I have seen this community change over the last 30, 35, 40 years. And what I love about it is everybody loves it here. Not just because they think it's the bedroom community of the Seattle market or the Portland market. Tell me a better place in this country where you can be within an hour's drive to a beach, to a mountain, to national forests.
Absolutely.
There is no other place.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, I just know that people that are here, they're here for a reason. They're here because they love the convenience of the community. They love the network of the community. There's so much diversity in this community. I love it. And every day you see something new. You see something different every day. It's a really easy story for me to tell of somebody that's looking to relocate here to the Pacific Northwest. It's an easy story to tell.
Yeah.
And so hard not to like that. Right? It makes it easy.
Yeah. Boom. Mic drop right there. Well, that is the best way to end this. So thank you, Jim, for coming. Thank you, everybody, for listening. As you will see, in the future, we're going to bring podcasts. This podcast will get released every 2 weeks. We'll have different folks. Next podcast, we're actually talking to the folks who currently run the Tumwater Brewfest, which is turning into one of the biggest ones in not just Western Washington, like Washington State. So those are the type of people we're going to bring in. We're going to bring in nonprofits to talk about some of the issues that we see in our community, hunger and homelessness, and how you can help and how they're helping. The biggest thing about this Thurston Talk podcast is it's an opportunity for us to show you the different people and organizations that are making a huge difference in this community. We're proud to be able to sponsor with Olympic Sotheby's International Realty and the team here. because they are one of those organizations that's doing exactly that. So hopefully you'll tune in and listen to some future podcasts. Jim, I want to thank you very much, not only for supporting the show, but coming on and talking.
Yeah, thank you so much, Philip. I can't wait to see what you guys do with this.
Awesome. All right, folks. Talk to you soon.